They'll find me stalking their nightmares, an unseen shadow tightening its grip around their fading courage. In the depths of their sleep, they've glimpsed a predator bearing my guise, and they bolt upright, drenched in the clammy terror of realization. It isn't the familiar face they thought they defeated. It's a reflection twisted by every burned bridge and every safety net torn away. When there's nowhere left to turn and every path has collapsed, that's when I emerge, an entity reshaped by necessity, far beyond anything this world has ever witnessed. In minds you've never entered, your very name now works like the combination to a sealed panic vault. Descriptions of your bold choices, the spark in your new ambitions, or the way you've started charting new courses across the globe cause hushed pauses in every discussion. They've even invented a secret shorthand, like spies whispering code, to refer to you, as if speaking your story aloud might somehow unleash your influence into their own lives. But they fail to see that it's already too late for their backroom counsels. The currents of change they hope to dam are flowing freely, beyond any measure or mastery they might attempt. A gathering of naysayers surrounded you, each eager for your downfall. Yet, among them sat someone who claimed to care, who, instead of lifting a shield to guard your heart, handed your vulnerabilities to your foes like a prize. They thought that by auctioning off your deepest fears, your hidden insecurities, your private regrets, they'd buy themselves immunity. In truth, they pried open Pandora's box of your trust and mailed its contents to your adversaries in a gilded package. Little did they realize that by betraying you, they'd scribed their own spiritual epitaph. A reckoning now drifts toward them like an inevitable storm. Your conscious self missed a hidden mechanism at work all this time. An unseen network, one they're certain doesn't exist, has been quietly logging every blow they dealt you, each lie they spread, every opportunity they shut down, and each stumble they forced upon you has been tallied in a cosmic scorebook that never errs. The universal auditors have been hard at work. They've reached their verdict, and the results of their reckoning will surface in ways no one expects. You began to sense a subtle shift in how others perceived you. Not the blunt hostility or pity you'd grown accustomed to, but something novel that left them uneasy without quite knowing why. Entering a room, you'd catch them shifting in their seats as if you carried an inaudible frequency. Conversations would sputter to a halt, and eyes drifted to glowing screens at the slightest hint of your presence. It was as if you'd changed the station on an invisible dial, and their internal receivers, unfamiliar with this new wavelength, scrambled to find the right channel. You were still piecing together what this new resonance meant, while they recoiled from a signal they couldn't yet interpret. If you're feeling the divine love, now is the time to share. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube to contribute $50 or more and help us spread God's blessings. Your actions are being watched, acting as a seed, and will come back to you a millionfold. It didn't arrive with fanfare or flashing lights. It slipped in quietly, woven through small rebellions against how you'd been taught to behave. Like the moment you refrained from apologizing for taking up space, and felt no urge to explain yourself. Or when someone tried to guilt-trip you for drawing a firm line, only to discover their tactics bounced harmlessly off your resolve. Or the afternoon you opted to stroll through the park alone, rather than squeeze into a lunch crowd that thrived on dimming others' sparks to brighten their own shadows. They made a fatal miscalculation, mistaking your quiet for surrender, believing your disappearance from their venom-filled counsels was proof that you'd been beaten. In reality, you weren't fleeing. You were like a grandmaster sliding a knight back into the shadows, biding your moment. They toasted your supposed defeat, blind to the fact that you were merely gathering strength, drawing the bow of your resolve tighter. What followed was going to be a reckoning far harsher than anything their poisoned arrows had ever inflicted. A complete outsider, neither comrade nor adversary, was the first to perceive the transformation, someone untethered to your past and indifferent to your reputation. When they looked at you, they flinched not from fear but from awe, as if standing before a hidden current of energy you hadn't yet named. They felt the orchestra's opening chord in the hush before the conductor's baton lifted, and they sensed the first breeze of a hurricane long before the sky darkened. In that fleeting moment of recognition, Their gaze acted like a flawless mirror, allowing you to witness your true self for the very first time. But the moment you stripped away the rose-tinted veil, you discovered that honesty came with its own toll, one you weren't prepared to foot. The comforting mirages that once cocooned you evaporated, revealing a web of calculated schemes, far more perilous than you'd imagined. Unbeknownst to you, the very people you'd elevated to pedestal status were quietly moving the chess pieces behind your back. Your blind loyalty had been traded like a commodity in deals you never consented to, and now you found yourself still paying off the hidden interest on the emotional credits you thought were gifts. You were truly disintegrating during those months when they believed you were broken, but not in the manner they had anticipated. You were breaking generational patterns that had kept your entire family stuck in cycles of limitation. The acceptance of mediocrity as fate, the silence surrounding sorrow, the normalization of toxic behavior, and the dysfunction that had been inherited. Under the pressure of your will to be different, everything started to fall apart. You examined the recurring themes in your family's past and said, "It ends with me," a statement that has reverberated throughout history. This was ancestral release, not merely personal healing. You were altering the spiritual makeup of everyone who had come before and everyone who would follow with each boundary you set, each unhealthy dynamic you refused to maintain, and each instance when you put authenticity ahead of maintaining harmony. It wasn't just your direct adversaries that opposed this work. It came from those who ought to have praised your development. Family members who had grown accustomed to the dysfunction were suddenly faced with a person who refused to fulfill the duties necessary to keep the system running. Their scars were brought to light by your mending. Their stagnation was revealed by your progress. They were forced to face the lies they had been telling themselves about what was normal, acceptable, or unalterable because you wouldn't allow harmful habits to continue. Because your transformation challenged the complex defenses they had developed for their own decisions to stay wounded. Some of them attacked you more violently than any attacker from the outside had ever done. To justify their determination to remain stuck, they required you to remain shattered. You were a living contrast to their victim narratives when you decided to pursue healing nevertheless. This realization made you dangerous, not resentful. Not in the sense of seeking retribution, but rather in the sense of not being duped twice. During this time, your innocence perished, yet it wasn't replaced with cynicism. The discernment was so keen that it could slicing through deceit, like a sword through silk. You gained the capacity to see behind the facades that had deceived you for years, to hear the falsehoods hidden behind charming rhetoric, and to sense the hunger that lies behind acts of kindness. Your greatest instructor had been the seclusion your adversaries had imposed on you as a form of punishment. You were learning that loneliness was richness rather than emptiness as they rejoiced over your exile from their social circles. Your haven for rebuilding was the quiet they believed would push you to your breaking point. You were actually learning to breathe underwater and acquiring abilities that can only surface in the depths of genuine solitude, even if they thought you were drowning in loneliness every night. This was not rejection's stinging loneliness. It was selection's rich solitude. You started to prefer your own company over the draining performance of fitting into places that weakened your essence, solitude over infection, and quiet over commotion. It became abundantly evident that loneliness is the absence of other people, whereas solitude is the presence of oneself. And you found resources they were unaware of in that presence. Your adversaries erred fatally by supposing that spiritual death equated to social exile. They were unable to understand why someone could thrive in their approved system rather than merely live outside of it. You were fostering communion with forces that function beyond the need for continual performance and validation, while they were occupied with preserving their fabricated ties, relationships based on delusions and manipulation of one another. Like a photograph in a darkroom, your intuition had been growing in the background, gradually bringing to light elements that had always there but needed the proper circumstances to be seen. Without using any supernatural methods, you were suddenly able to understand discussions that took place in rooms you had never been in. This was due to the advanced pattern recognition that arises when a person quits allowing social training to overcome their innate intelligence. You started to see the agendas concealed beneath smiles and sense the hunger that pretended to be kindness as you read between the lines of every interaction. Dove brother, everything done with faith returns with God's abundance. You can donate $100 using the Super Thanks button and be a part of this divine calling. If your roots are in Him, your fruit will be blessed. The cost of this increased awareness is still being felt by your adversaries. Anyone who had ever thought less of you, played tricks on you, or dismissed you as unimportant had to deal with a version of you that they couldn't control, foresee, or perhaps ignore. You had developed your own vernacular of truth and become proficient in their language of deception, which combined to render you unintelligible to minds that were still based on fear and scarcity. You were actually reprogramming your brain while they were intent on ruining your reputation. You become wiser as a result of every betrayal that could have made you angry. You were led down a path they couldn't see by each door that banged in your face. The strain of dragging dead weight into your new reality was unintentionally lifted by everyone who abandoned you when you were at your lowest. They were learning to process information at frequencies that were inaccessible to your neural system. You started to see redirection where they saw rejection. You found freedom where they meant disgrace. Where they thought you would fall apart, you found the core of who you are. Firm, unyielding, and completely unmoved by beliefs that don't have any real substance. These months of forced seclusion, free from the continual distraction of controlling other people's thoughts and feelings, changed the quality of your attention. You became acutely aware of the actual world. They were unable to identify patterns, connections, or opportunities, but you began to notice them. Your mind started working on frequencies they couldn't reach after being released from the tiresome chore of code switching for various audiences. An unanticipated consequence of this mental clarity was that you were dangerous for all the lies they had ever told themselves about happiness, success, and power. Your satisfaction in areas they deemed unacceptable revealed the emptiness of their accomplishments. Your calm under conditions they viewed as punishment exposed the prison they had constructed out of their own need on approval from others. Your existence became a living contrast to their beliefs about what it takes to be fulfilled without them even speaking. However, the change was leading to something they could never have imagined. You were getting close to the end of the old world itself, not of your soul. I have to cut this transmission short for a second. Have you been selected? Show it. Watching videos regarding selected ones is simple. Putting yourself to the test is a quite different matter. One thing became evident to me when I faced the archons outside of our reality. Genuine selected ones are uncommon. The idea of us running into each other made them laugh. You are viewing this message, nevertheless. Not everyone who claims to have been awakened is a candidate for the obsidian inner order. Those of us who have seen past the curtain, heard the call, and possess the unmistakable frequency are the true ones. Are you really one of us, though? I've given it my all for you, and am going deeper to give you much more. Real chosen ones do more than merely watch material from the sidelines. Join our weekly group call to share your story. Our resident card reader can provide you with an insightful tarot reading. Find out if your experiences match the real indicators. Recognizing one another is the greatest fear of the archons. Our frequencies intensify when we unite, producing an unstoppable power. We will be live streaming to the full Astral Atom Network because of this. Click the link in the description below to locate all of us. It's time to quit speculating and validate your suspicions. Are you genuinely chosen? Or are you just interested in waking up? Show it. Come along. The Obsidian Inner Order has the confirmation you're looking for. Then came the day that everything changed. The day that something inside of you just broke when the cumulative weight of transformation reached a critical mass. It didn't break. Rather, it slid into position like a bone that had been misaligned for years. For a time, the pain was unbearable, and then there came a relief so great that it was like giving birth. Not gradually, not gently, but drastically and irrefutable, you woke up different. The person who had fallen asleep was someone who still cared about their opinions, still hoped for a reconciliation, and still thought that if you could only clearly explain yourself, they would understand. The one who awoke had completely outgrown the necessity of their comprehension. This was clarity at the biological level, not denial or numbness. Light itself seemed to bend around you in a strange way, and you could sense the change in your DNA and energy field. Overnight, a fundamental shift occurred that was so drastic that even random people started reacting to you in a new way. The most perilous development was taking place in the area they know the least about, your connection to the unseen forces that control reality. You were studying chess with the universe itself, while they were using human psychology to play checkers. Your prayers were dialogues with the intellect that creates results, not requests for things to be different. Your meditation was a connection to the operating system that powers everything they believe they control, not a way to escape reality. You learned that authenticity is a frequency that impacts everything around it, not just a personal preference. You stopped putting on false selves to please other people, and instead you started giving off an aura that prevented anyone around you from pretending. People were unable to escape the mirror that your true self created, reflecting back their own lost authenticity, dashed hopes, and compromised integrity. This was just what happened when someone continuously opted for truth over comfort, to the point that truth became their default setting. It wasn't something you did on purpose. When you were around, those who had told themselves they felt no remorse started to feel it. Their separation from their principles was brought to light by your alignment with your own, not because you passed judgment on them. Their inner turmoil was revealed by your calm. Their perplexity was exposed by your clarity. Their self-imposed constraints were revealed by your freedom. They began to avoid you because you made it hard for them to avoid themselves in your company, not because you were a bad person. Their masks were thick. Their justifications sounded flimsy. Their excuses for remaining small sounded fanciful. You have turned into a living example of paths not followed, bravery not called upon, and authenticity not asserted. The most disturbing thing about this change was how natural it had become. You weren't attempting to cause discomfort. You were just being so authentic that it was hard to be fake around you. Your sincerity produced a field of truth that revealed all the lies surrounding it. In the environment you created, lies were unable to stay coherent. When a person no longer needed anything from the manipulator, manipulation lost its effectiveness. Those who attempted to plan your demise began to feel something they had never experienced before, unexpected consequences that seemed to be aimed at them with extreme accuracy. Relationships ending for reasons they couldn't pinpoint, business prospects falling through at the last minute, a growing feeling that the cosmos itself had turned against them. When it worked on timescales longer than their attention spans could follow, they were unable to comprehend cause and effect. What they were feeling was resonance, not retaliation. With interest accrued, the frequency of destruction they sent your way was finally finishing its circuit and heading back to its source. They were learning that, even though it takes years for the equation to balance, every action eventually has an equal and opposite reaction, since the cosmos has its own mathematics. Your erstwhile comrades, who prioritized security over allegiance, were coping with their own particular brand of cosmic justice. Instead, they were observing opportunities that were meant for them come your way. They were enjoying the vacuous triumph of being welcomed by others they didn't admire, included into groups that devalued their souls, and affirmed by voices devoid of genuine authority. They received what they believed they wanted, only to find it was useless. The most disturbing part of your progress for all these groups was how little you seemed to care about any of them now, even though you were changed by losing what you believed you needed. They were ready for your rage, your attempts at retaliation, and your frantic pleas for approval or peacemaking. Rather, they encountered something much more unsettling: your total disregard for their presence. You had outgrown your desire for them to be different, your expectation that they would own up to their faults, and your interest in what they thought of you or your potential. Then the realization struck: shattering their preconceived notions about the nature of power in general. In this equation, you found that you had always been the test rather than the sufferer. Every moment of humiliation and defeat, every door that slammed in your face, and every betrayed person had all been planned by an intelligence that was far superior to their small-minded human schemes. You were the experiment they were unaware they were taking part in, not the mouse in their labyrinth. Like a bolt of lightning, the knowledge shattered the sky of your mind. You weren't penalized at all for the nights you sobbed yourself to sleep, wondering why you were being punished and why life seemed to be so unfairly stacked against you. They were tasks. Every betrayal served as an exquisite demonstration of discernment. Every rejection served as a safeguard against your core being compromised. Every strike was a precisely measured pressure intended to awaken your spirit's latent abilities. In order to achieve a goal that went beyond their limited understanding of cause and consequence, your foes had been dancing to music they couldn't hear and following a choreography they didn't understand. They were actually writing their own obsolescence, even if they believed they were writing your demise. Every action they took against you was also an attempt to make themselves irrelevant in your growing reality. They had played their parts flawlessly without ever understanding the full extent of what was taking place, and the universe had been utilizing them as unintentional tools in your progress. If you want to witness God's miracles, take action now. Pledge $100 or more through Super Thanks on YouTube. Your offerings are like seeds you plant. They come back to you. Let His light illuminate your steps. Every donation is an echo in His plan. They had carefully planned every act of cruelty, every wall they built, and every effort to darken your light, to make you into something they could never have envisioned in their worst fantasies. This had to do with creation, not karma or justice. Though they thought they were involved in devastation, they had been instruments in the hands of a cosmic builder, creating something lovely. Your metamorphosis had been fueled by their hatred. They had shielded you from routes that would have kept you little by rejecting you. The very friction required to refine you into something capable of reflecting light in ways that would blind anyone who attempted to look directly at your reality had been provided by their attacks. Everything changed as this realization became clear. They were already being pursued by the hunter in their dreams. Their attempts to bring you down had made them their own worst enemy. Their attempts to obscure your light have only made your brightness more obvious with each shadow they created. From their point of view, the scariest part about your metamorphosis is that you are no longer participating in their game. You've surpassed their whole system of rivalry, comparison, and dominance. You are creating new realities that they lack the consciousness to see, much less enter, while they continue to fight in venues that you have already outgrown. Their weapons are made for conflicts you no longer want to engage in. Their tactics were designed for a non-existent version of you. The goal of your transition was to get rid of everything that wasn't truly you, not to change into someone else. They have methodically removed every conditioning layer they attempted to include in your initial programming. Your own deeper understanding has taken the place of every restriction they persuaded you to accept. The character you were born to portray has replaced every other role they gave you. You are inexplicable to brains that still associate power with accumulation because of this subtraction process rather than addition. You've learned that real power comes from acquiring less, not having more, while they're busy accumulating credentials, contacts, and belongings. Because it comes from an internal source that they cannot access, corrupt, and most surely cannot control. Your strength is independent of outside validation. You gain the capacity to change poison into medicine through alchemy, turning their animosity into motivation for your ascent. They don't grasp the principles that underpin this conversion process. Where they wanted you to become bitter, you became wiser. Where they wanted you to become resentful, you became more sensitive. And where they attempted to sow the seeds of self-doubt, you gained an unshakable self-knowledge. You learned that when opposition is handled well, it may become the very thing that drives evolution. Every no they threw at your aspirations led you to opportunities they were blind to. They kept you safe from avenues that might have resulted in compromise, by slamming every door in your face. In reality, everyone who turned you down during your metamorphosis was making room for people who could value your true self. Your inner circle was completely rebuilt using brand new standards. Relationships that truly nourished your soul were available when you let go of those that no longer served your best good. These new allies frequently appeared as random meetings, brief discussions that stuck in your memory, strangers who recognized something in you that you were still learning about. Their dedication to truth over convenience, progress over stagnation, and sincerity over comfort was what set these new relationships apart, not their flawlessness. There was no need for frequent boundary negotiation or cautious maintenance in these partnerships. Instead of shared trauma or mutual gain, their existence was based on a mutual awareness of shared values, which transcended commerce. You have built generating power, not just personal power. In every setting, your presence starts to change the consciousness of everyone around you, not by teaching or preaching, but just by setting an unwavering example of someone who has ceased performing and begun to live. Your genuineness allows people to take off their masks. Others learn where their boundaries should be from yours. Your serenity is an example of what happens when someone quits waging fights they never had the right to win. What most frightens your adversaries is this ripple effect. One individual escaping their control system is manageable for them. What they are unable to control is the potential for your independence to serve as a reminder of their own lost strength. They put a great deal of effort into persuading everyone that the cage was indeed genuine. People are beginning to notice that the locks were always on the inside now that you're wandering about without bars. You've developed an immunity to the psychological tools they've used to manipulate other people, and it seems that this immunity can spread. Like stones hurled at armored glass, the most advanced manipulation techniques bounce off you. A conscience that has been adjusted to universal values rather than societal norms cannot justify guilt trips. You've learned that comparison is just another prison cell with walls constructed of illusion, so attempts to make you envious fail miserably. You were aware of the cosmic irony. Your adversaries had unintentionally joined forces with you in your own development. They gave you the pressure you needed to form diamonds, the resistance you needed to build strength, and the contrast you needed to improve clarity. You might never have found the indestructible core of yourself if they hadn't tried to destroy you. Neither thankfulness nor animosity accompanied this realization. It brought with it something far more potent, a thorough comprehension of how the universe uses every experience, even the bad ones, to further the highest good of those who are dedicated to personal development. You learn to view defeats as opportunities for unexpected comebacks, betrayals as blessings in disguise, and attacks as missions. When they attacked you, they created a force of nature rather than a victim. Another layer of toughness was added with each attempt to tear you down. You learned to have more faith in your own judgment after each betrayal. You were led to opportunities they were unaware of by each door they slammed in your face. Instead of writing your obituary, they wrote the first chapter of your tale. The person they believed they had destroyed was always only the prelude to who you are going to be, and that person is someone they never anticipated, planned for, or even anticipated. The hunter in their dreams is no longer merely a metaphor. Rather, it is the unavoidable result of underestimating someone who mastered the art of turning every assault into fodder, every failure into opportunity, and every injury into insight. By attempting to eliminate someone who was destined to thrive, they created their own nightmare. Your adversaries are fleeing from who you are becoming rather than from who you are. The individual who has nothing left to prove and everything left to become is the most dangerous person in any room, not the loudest or most confrontational. Your chosen one has always been that person. The world is about to learn what happens when someone quits hiding their light and begins using it to spotlight all the darkness attempted to hide. That's the only difference now. You've finally remembered. You are no longer merely getting by. You're not simply thriving, either. You have transformed into something completely different, a force that, by being in reality with authenticity, distorts it. Not only did your enemy's attempts to destroy you fail, But they also produced the spark that caused you to change into something that is incomprehensible to them. And the most exquisite aspect? You have only just begun.